April 12, 2026, 08:17 a.m., South China Sea, 2nd Thomas Shoal, 105 nautical miles from Palawan, Philippines. Disputed waters, China claims entire South China Sea, 9-line, rejected by International Tribunal 2016. China ignores ruling, asserts sovereignty anyway. Philippines maintains presence through unusual means. BRP Sierra Madre, rusting World War II-era tank landing ship. Deliberately grounded 1999. Never moved since, slowly deteriorating, becoming reef. But still flies Philippine flag, still houses 8 Marine garrison, still represents sovereignty. That's why every month Philippine Navy sends resupply mission, delivers food, water, medicine, building materials, keeps Marines alive, keeps ship functional, keeps claim valid. But China doesn't want this. Wants ship abandoned, wants garrison withdrawn, wants Philippines surrendering claim. So Chinese Coast Guard harasses resupply missions, blocks approaches, uses water cannons, creates incidents. Today becomes worst incident yet. Today harassment becomes ramming. Today tension becomes crisis. Welcome to Navy Force, where rust bucket on reef represents national sovereignty and 47 miles determine if American destroyer intervenes or alliance credibility dies. Philippine resupply vessel DF-3001, small boat, civilian crew, Navy escort officer, carrying supplies for Sierra Madre garrison, standard monthly mission, routine operation until not routine. At 08:23 a.m., Chinese Coast Guard vessels appear, 3 ships, CCG 5901, CCG 5902, CCG 5903, each displaces 3,000 tons, massive compared to Philippine boat. They position themselves, block approach route. Standard harassment tactic, predictable, expected. Philippine boat changes course. Attempts alternate approach. Chinese vessels adjust, block again. This continues. Cat and mouse. Maritime chess. Dangerous but nonviolent, usually. Philippine captain radios. Chinese vessels, you are in Philippine exclusive economic zone. We have legal right to transit these waters. Request you allow passage. Chinese response immediate, aggressive, threatening. Philippine vessel, you are entering Chinese territorial waters. 2nd Thomas Shoal belongs to China. Turn back immediately or face consequences. Same exchange repeated monthly. Meaningless ritual, diplomatic theater. Nobody yields, nobody shoots, nobody rams. Until today. At 08:47 a.m., CCG 5901 accelerates, closes on Philippine boat. Not blocking maneuver, ramming course, Philippine captain sees it, tries to evade, too late, too slow. Chinese vessel impacts port side, steel crushing fiberglass, metal screeching, people screaming. Philippine boat rolls, takes on water, flooding. 3 crew injured from impact, 1 seriously. Broken ribs, possible internal bleeding. Boat still afloat but damaged. Radio transmission emergency. Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is Philippine vessel DF-3001. We have been rammed by Chinese Coast Guard, 3 crew injured, taking on water, request immediate assistance. Message received multiple stations, Philippine Coast Guard, Philippine Navy, U.S. Navy. Everyone hears, everyone reacts. Clock starts, crisis begins. Question for viewers, Allied vessel rammed in disputed waters. U.S. has mutual defense treaty with Philippines. Does treaty apply? A, yes. Automatic B, presidential decision. C, only if attacked by military. Comment your interpretation. Navy force believes alliance commitments are tested when allies need help, and answering that call determines if alliances have meaning or are empty promises. USS Miguel Keith Arleigh Burke class destroyer position 47 nautical miles northeast, conducting freedom of navigation operation, standard patrol, routine presence. Captain receives distress call, assesses situation. Chinese Coast Guard rammed Philippine vessel, 3 injured, alliance partner requesting assistance. Mutual defense treaty potentially triggered but complicated. Treaty says armed attack. Is ramming armed attack? Is Coast Guard military force? Is this treaty situation? Legal advisors uncertain. Political guidance unclear. Captain must decide. Every minute delayed is minute Philippine crew suffers. Minute Chinese believes America won't respond. Minute alliance credibility erodes. Captain orders flank speed, course towards 2nd Thomas Shoal, maximum speed 30 plus knots, ETA 87 minutes. Whether authorized to intervene unclear, whether he'll intervene regardless becoming clearer. That's command decision. That's leadership moment. That's choosing between legal caution and moral imperative. On Navy force, we understand alliance commitments mean nothing if not honored when tested. Treaty on paper versus action in crisis are different things. Subscribe to Navy force if you believe American credibility requires defending allies, even when legally ambiguous and politically inconvenient, because next time nobody will trust American promises. Philippine boats still afloat? Barely. Damage control efforts ongoing, pumping water, patching holes, treating injured. Chinese Coast Guard vessels maintain position. Don't assist, don't withdraw. Just watch, that's cold, that's calculated, that's sending message. Philippines weak, China strong, America absent. That's narrative China promoting. That's reality China creating. Unless USS Miguel Keith arrives, unless America acts, unless alliance means something. Chinese vessels receive orders from headquarters, monitor situation, prevent resupply, demonstrate control, do not engage American warship if it arrives, avoid escalation. This is harassment operation, not war operation. Limits exist, lines exist. Crossing them triggers consequences China doesn't want. But harassing Philippines, acceptable, expected, effective. That's gray zone warfare. That's coercion without combat. That's modern Chinese strategy. At 09:34 a.m., USS Miguel Keith arrives. Destroyer positions between Chinese vessels and damaged Philippine boat. Physical barrier, protective posture, statement without words, American flag flying, weapons systems manned, Phalanx CIWS active, SM-2 missiles ready, Tomahawk cruise missiles loaded. This is warship, this is power, this is America saying enough. Chinese vessels maintain distance 800 meters, close enough to monitor, far enough to avoid appearing afraid. Standoff. Nobody shooting, nobody yielding. Mexican standoff at sea. But psychological advantage shifts. Philippines no longer alone, no longer vulnerable, no longer target. American presence changes dynamic, changes calculations, changes outcomes. That's alliance value. That's what mutual defense means. Not necessarily fighting, just being there, being willing, being capable. That deters, that protects, that matters. Philippine Coast Guard vessel arrives 10:12 a.m., takes damaged DF 3001 in tow, begins return journey to Palawan. USS Miguel Keith escorts, maintains position between Philippine vessels and Chinese Coast Guard. Protective convoy, safe passage. Chinese vessels follow, maintain pressure, maintain presence, don't interfere, can't interfere. American destroyer would respond, would defend, would escalate. China doesn't want that, not over supply boat, not over harassment, not worth triggering military confrontation. So Chinese follow, monitor, report, claim victory anyway. Prevented resupply, damaged Philippine vessel, demonstrated control. Mission accomplished despite American intervention. That's narrative Chinese media promotes. That's story Chinese public believes. That's reality Chinese government creates. Doesn't matter if true, matters if believed. Propaganda wins when facts are contested and everyone claims victory and truth becomes partisan. But resupply mission failed. Sierra Madre garrison didn't receive supplies. Marines still waiting, still hungry, still low on water. China achieved objective, prevented resupply through violence, through ramming, through intimidation, backed by force. Philippines humiliated despite American protection. That's concerning. That's problem. That's pattern. Because if China can prevent resupply, eventually garrison must withdraw, eventually ship must be abandoned, eventually claim must be surrendered. That's Chinese strategy. Patient, persistent, coercive. Doesn't require war, just requires making presence unsustainable, making resupply impossible, making Garrison untenable. Time works for China. Patience works for China. Harassment works for China. Unless Philippines escalates, unless America commits more, unless costs increase for China. But none of that happening. So China winning slowly, incrementally, irreversibly. Washington debates response. National Security Council convenes. Options assessed. First option, increase presence. Station American vessel permanently at Second Thomas Shoal. Guarantee resupply. Dieter harassment. Problem solved, except commits American ship indefinitely, except creates permanent crisis, except risks shooting incident. Unacceptable. Second option, arm Philippine vessels. Provide weapons, enable defense, let Philippines shoot back. Problem is escalation. Chinese casualties mean Chinese response. Regional war becomes possible. Nuclear-armed China versus American-allied Philippines creates Cuba missile crisis in Asia. Unacceptable. Third option, diplomatic protest. Condemn ramming. Demand compensation. Threaten consequences. Problem is China ignores protests. Has ignored protests for decade. Will ignore again. Words without force mean nothing. Fourth option, accept situation, acknowledge Chinese control, encourage Philippines to compromise, preserve stability over sovereignty. That's realism, that's pragmatism, that's abandoning ally, that's destroying alliance credibility, that's inviting Chinese expansion everywhere. Most unacceptable option, yet increasingly likely option, because other options too risky or too expensive or too complicated, so America drifts toward acceptance, toward acknowledgement, toward defeat. Not formal defeat, not declared defeat, just practical defeat, just quiet defeat, just defeat that's never called defeat, but is defeat nonetheless. At 14:23 p.m., second resupply attempt. Different boat, different route. Same Chinese harassment. CCG 5901 intercepts, uses water cannon, high-pressure water stream, knocks Philippine sailor overboard, man in water, drowning risk. USS Miguel Keith responds immediately, launches RHIB, rigid hull inflatable boat, rescues sailor, returns him to Philippine vessel. Chinese water cannon continues, targets rescue boat, waters down Americans, dangerous, provocative, nearly triggering. American sailors angry, want to respond, want to retaliate. Orders say maintain composure, don't escalate, show restraint. Professional discipline prevails. Nobody shoots, nobody rams, nobody creates incident. But frustration mounting, anger building. Restraint has limits. Those limits approaching. Next incident might trigger response, might cause shooting, might start war. Chinese playing dangerous game, pushing boundaries, testing limits. Eventually they'll push too far. Eventually Americans will respond. Eventually mistake becomes catastrophe. That's crisis of incrementalism. That's danger of salami slicing. That's risk of gray zone warfare. Each slice is small. Each provocation is limited. Each incident is manageable until cumulative effect is intolerable, until accumulated provocations demand response, until gray zone becomes red zone. We're not there yet, but approaching, accelerating, counting down. What did Navy force learn from this crisis? First, gray zone warfare is effective. China harasses without shooting, coerces without invading, gains without fighting. That's sophisticated strategy. That's difficult to counter. Second, alliances require presence. USS Miguel Keith mattered because it was there. Physical presence deters. Absent presence emboldens. Third, harassment escalates slowly, first blocking, then ramming, then water cannons on rescuers. Each step worse, each step testing response. Fourth, restraint has costs. American sailors showed discipline. Didn't escalate. But discipline means accepting provocation, accepting humiliation, accepting Chinese behavior. That creates resentment, creates pressure, creates eventual explosion. Fifth, South China Sea is permanent crisis. This incident won't be last. Next month another, month after another, pattern continues indefinitely. exhausting, expensive, unsustainable, but alternatives worse, so pattern continues. Final lesson, some territories are indefensible. 2nd Thomas Shoal, 105 miles from Philippines, 700 miles from Chinese mainland. Geography favors China. Logistics favor China. Proximity favors China. Philippines cannot win militarily, can only persist, can only endure, can only hope international support maintains claim. But international support is words. Chinese harassment is actions. Actions defeat words eventually. That's tragic, that's unjust, that's reality. Sierra Madre will collapse eventually. Garrison will withdraw eventually. China will control Shoal eventually. Question is, when, not if. Philippine strategy is delay. American strategy is deter. Chinese strategy is patience. Patience usually wins. That's concerning. That's precedent. That's future for other disputes. Quiz answer from earlier. Does Mutual Defense Treaty apply to Coast Guard ramming? Answer is B, presidential decision. Treaty says armed attack. Lawyers debate if Coast Guard counts, if ramming counts, if injury counts. Therefore, president must decide. Political decision, not legal certainty. That's problem with alliance commitments. Always interpretation, always judgment, always discretion. Never automatic, never guaranteed, never certain. Allies need to understand. America will help, probably. But not definitely. Probably is better than nothing. Worse than certainty. Philippines learning this, Taiwan watching this, South Korea noting this, Japan calculating this. Every American ally evaluates commitment based on Philippine experience. That's alliance credibility test. That's why this incident matters beyond supply boat. That's why ramming is strategic event. Here's truth mainstream media won't explain fully. China is winning South China Sea dispute. Not dramatically, not decisively, but incrementally, surely, irreversibly. Built artificial islands, militarized them, harasses opponents, prevents resupply, controls access, asserts sovereignty, all without firing shot, all without triggering war. That's strategic brilliance. That's patient coercion. That's gray zone mastery. Philippines can't counter. America won't fully commit. International law has no enforcement. Therefore, China advances. China gains. China wins eventually. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. Unless someone changes strategy, unless someone accepts costs, unless someone says no more forcefully than words. That's not happening. So China continues. Philippines endures. America watches. Pattern repeats. Crisis persists. Outcome inevitable. Subscribe to Navy Force if you believe Rust Bucket represents more than metal. Like this video if you support Philippine Marines living on Sierra Madre. Comment below. Should America station permanent vessel at 2nd Thomas Shoal? Should Philippines arm resupply boats? What would you do as destroyer captain watching ally being harassed? Your perspective matters. Your engagement builds awareness. Your comments demand leaders answer why alliances mean nothing when allies need help and everything when presidents give speeches. Next month, another resupply mission, another Chinese harassment, another American presence, another incident avoided, another crisis managed. Pattern continues forever until it doesn't, until someone shoots, until harassment becomes combat, until gray zone becomes war zone. That's ticking clock. That's eventual outcome. That's where patience ends and violence begins. Navy Force will be there. We'll report it. We'll explain it. We'll show you what others miss and media ignores and governments hide, because 2nd Thomas Shoal matters, because rusting ship matters, because 8 Marines matter, because alliance commitments matter, because if America abandons Philippines over supply boat, why would anyone trust American protection anywhere? Stay informed, stay engaged, stay with Navy Force, because tomorrow's crisis starts today and today's incident becomes tomorrow's precedent, and precedents determine whether alliances survive or dissolve, whether nations are protected or abandoned, whether words have meaning or are just noise. We'll tell you which, we'll show you truth, we'll demand you care, because somebody must.